Welcome back to Procore's Construction Cost Management Summit. I'm Katie Rapp, the Senior Product Marketing Manager for Procore's financial management portfolio. And over the last 6 years, I've worked closely with both our product teams and our customers to deliver Procore's trusted financial solutions and ERP integrations. This event has been a dream of mine for years, and I couldn't be more thrilled to be here with you all today. So let's get this discussion started. I'm excited to be here with Steve Means, Principal Consultant at Deloitte. Thanks for joining us today, Steve.
Yeah, thanks, Kitty. Glad to be here.
For everyone watching, can you give a brief overview of your background and your role at Deloitte?
Sure. So I'm a partner at Deloitte. Based in Houston. I've spent almost 30 years in the construction industry. First 17 years on the owner side, managing big complex projects. Since then, been a contractor and a consultant. For the last 10 years, probably more consulting work. At Deloitte, I look after our capital assets business, which really is all of our engineering, construction, operations, maintenance, and asset management offerings. And mostly I spend my time trying to help clients deliver their large scale projects more effectively and with less risk.
Great. So Steve, in the conversations that we're having with our customers, there's a lot of unpredictability right now. And especially when we look back at this past year, customers are looking for where they can control costs, really across people, technology, and process. How is Deloitte seeing these conversations with clients?
Yeah, it's a good question, Katie. I think it's been a little bit of a wake-up call, particularly since the beginning of COVID. I think for companies that leaned into a digital strategy, took it very seriously, I think they were less impacted. For the folks that rely on old manual ways of doing business, it was more difficult. And candidly, I was running a construction project out in Nevada, about $1 billion project, and we had cases of COVID. We had to deal with the whole who can let on site, processes, procedures, who has to quarantine. But I think the big thing is, if you think about construction, social distancing shouldn't be that complicated. If we've embraced the digital strategy, if we have advanced work packaging, if we can share drawings electronically, we can push data out in the field, get progress back from the field, do project controls remotely, it's something that we should be able to do in a socially distanced environment. So I think it's a lot of folks who are putting off that move to digital, I think, are starting to reconsider that.
So how do you answer that question for folks who are holding off? And I think a lot of it comes back to data and how to move to technology and keep the integrity and quality of that data, especially when you think about things like cost forecasting and just cost management in general.
Yeah, so often we see these forecasts and ultimate, EACs kind of spin wildly out of control. And the truth is, as an industry, I don't think we estimate very well. If I think about how you manage cost on a project, how you manage a project in general, good old school project discipline works. Standard work breakdown structure, cost breakdown structure, resource breakdown structure, earned value, rules of credit. But the truth is, we usually haven't logged design. The current estimate we all know isn't right. We struggle to get to quantities. We struggle to report against those quantities. And I think doing everything in a disparate fashion and not having a real top-down strategy to do real-time progress, real-time reporting, tying risk to cost, all those things I think we really struggle with. And for me, it's like, we started in this business with, 20 years ago with really experienced people and not a lot of technology and not a lot of data. Now we have reams and reams of data, and in a lot of cases, less experienced people, and we can't really make sense of that data. So moving to the next level of being able to collect real-time data and analyze it so it tells us what's really going on, so we can actually impact change and drive a project's success. That's really where I think the industry's headed.
It sounds like a lot of that, Steve, is technology is at the foundation of that. So how do companies start to make this transition from heavy manual processes that have worked to leveraging technology? How does the industry overall take advantage of this next wave of digitization for cost management?
Yeah, I think it's difficult, particularly in big EPC, right? I mean, the margins are very low, tough to invest in innovation. But more and more, I'm hearing from clients, look, we think it's a competitive strategy, it's a competitive edge for us to be able to bring real digital solutions to our clients, so we can show them, that we can provide them real-time insight on what's going on in projects. And we're starting to see that scored higher in bid tabs. So I think you're going to see the industry head that way. I think the most important thing for me is being able to put all your data in one place and do something with it. And that's really, if you got a scheduling tool over here, you got a cost tool over here, you got things in somebody's desk drawer and on clipboards, really bringing all that data back to a centralized place and being able to analyze it in a real-time basis is really what's going to, drive these projects. And that's something that I think we have to lean into.
I agree. We're hearing that a lot, that you can't separate cost management from the other areas of your business. It has to be all integrated. And if they do this well, and if technology is at the center of helping with this challenge, what do companies do now that they have this pile of data? How are they using that to more effectively manage their business?
This is where kind of real cost management comes into play. So what do I mean when I say real cost management? Final design, quantity takeoff, basis of estimate. We've taken these quantities, we've applied labor rates and materials and performance factors. Then the ability to be able to collect real-time data, progress in real time, tie risk back to cost. These are all things that we just don't really do very well as an industry. And I also think, they sound like buzzwords, but when I think about machine learning, AI, IoT, automation, there's a lot of processes and projects that are very manual and we don't really trust them. We spend a month putting the monthly report together. That's kind of rearward looking, very manual. No one trusts it. And getting to a place where we're collecting data in real time, we're doing daily progress, we're running a batch overnight, and leaders are coming in the next day and using that information to drive project performance, as opposed to managing cost in an Excel file. That's really not best loosely related to the schedule.
So it sounds like there's definitely a technology shift that has to take place, and the systems that you're using and the robustness of those systems need to get smarter and leveraging things like AI and machine learning. But you've also kept touching on this importance of people and accountability. And I think what you're talking about there is the culture in construction and the current culture of the relationships in construction. So how do you see those relationships impacting project success?
So I'm a big believer in culture. Culture is important. But I think culture is driven by accountability. So I think there's a couple of things that happen. We don't have mature processes. We don't have good tools. We set people up for failure and we beat the heck out of them. Or we don't want to upset people. We don't want to, so there's no accountability. And both of those strategies are wrong. I think having robust business processes, having a good assurance program, holding people accountable for the cost forecast. We've just gotten used to the fact that projects go over budget and it's fine. Well, it's obviously not fine. And also, oftentimes, my clients don't know once it's gone over budget, was it a good estimate and bad execution? Was it a bad estimate and good execution, or both bad? We really don't know. So I think, that end-to-end process of understanding that the estimate's good, understanding how we're going to do cost control in a real way, and then closing out and updating our kind of standard rates based on real-time projects. All those things are really important. It's something that I just don't think we do very well in this industry.
So the other point, Steve, you talked about earlier was managing the exceptions. And what I think you were saying there is real-time data, real-time insights. Those are the things we need to make the best decisions that we can. So what gets us there?
To get real-time progress and real-time insights, you have to progress the job every day. And what does that mean? You have to have a tool like Procore, has everything in the tool. We're managing in the tool. We don't have some stuff in a cost management tool, some stuff in a schedule tool, some stuff on spreadsheets, some stuff in this other system. And one of the things I really like about Procore is with everything on one platform, you can collaborate there. You can progress the job in real time. You can come to the table and discuss any challenges. And that's really where I think, we have to get to. And when I say one platform, I don't mean the contractor uses a system and then they generate a series of paper and that paper gets handed to the owner, but more and more collaboration. And that's really where I think I see more and more clients going to a Procore to help them get more daily insights, to understand better what's going on in the project, less a focus on rearward reporting and more of a focus on real-time driving progress in the project.
Well, Steve, thank you so much. This has been such a great conversation. I really appreciate you sharing your insights today.
Thanks, Katie.
And now I'm excited to transition over to our roundtable discussion with Procore customers on 5 things that your business needs to prioritize to take control of your costs in 2021. I'm excited to be here with three phenomenal customer speakers. I'd like to welcome Sarah Heppenstall, VP of Construction at First Capital REIT, Morgan Trainer, Senior Director of Operational Excellence at Ryan Companies, and Wes Simpson, CEO and President at Green Mechanical. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
All right, let's get this conversation started. So we just heard Steve mention how controlling costs has been more important than ever right now. There's so much unpredictability. There is increasing demands on every stakeholder in our industry. So we were very intentional with this conversation to get an owner, a general contractor, and a specialty contractor together with both office and field perspectives because we all have a stake in managing costs. Throughout this conversation, we're going to highlight 5 things to prioritize in 2021 to take control of your costs that touch on technology, alignment, culture, process, and insights. So with that, I'd like to kick things off with Morgan, representing our general contractor's perspective. So Morgan, you all saw an importance in investing in technology early on, especially when it came to digitizing cost management. Can you tell us a little bit more about why it was so important to Ryan Companies to leverage integrated technology to manage your project financials?
Yeah, so at Ryan Companies, we feel really strongly that we want our teammates to be in a tool that makes the most sense for them. And what that means is project managers and superintendents should be in Procore, and our accountants should be in Oracle. There is so much inefficient use of time and resources when double entry is required or asking teammates to leverage tools that don't align with their work situation. So for example, if a superintendent and a PM are leveraging an iPad at a job site for project documentation, then they should also be allowed to use the iPad for project financials. And that's just something that Ryan feels really strongly for. So our current integrations and our tool sets allow for this to happen.
That's great, Morgan, and it's something that I've heard for years here. How important was it to align these two teams? Like they all both have the technologies they trust, they both have their procedures, but they share the data. So how important was that when y'all made this investment?
So we partnered with our construction accounting team from the beginning of our Procore endeavor. And we all, accounting and construction operations, traveled to Procore headquarters for those discovery sessions. This allowed for all our stakeholders to be involved, and it set expectations for how future integrations would interact between the two teams.
Great. And Sarah, when we were talking, I know that First Capital shares a very similar mindset around this. So as a developer, how has technology helped your company gain control over your costs?
I feel like technology has become a real buzzword at the moment. People are talking about it, and it can become almost a big, scary conversation because there is so much out there and it's continually evolving. I think a lot of businesses get stuck in the dilemma at the moment of which technology to use. And technology can definitely help us to get smarter on cost and also time and quality. But we don't need to be sold out over by the overly fancy stuff. We need things that's functional and stands the test of time. Internally, I put together a task force to evaluate what technology we really need. And then I can see what should be implemented. The task force I put together is definitely looking at cost control and better ways to do this. So for example, we're looking at certain technologies where you could do scans of buildings, and then it can relate it back to progress draws and see how you're doing in terms of that. People on the ground, so those that are delivering the projects, definitely need to understand the costs and how they relate back to time and quality, but we need to also be able to have technology that can roll this up to an executive level too.
And Sarah, why was digitizing your cost processes a strategic part of your company's goals and maybe in the next year and over the next 3 years?
So First Capital, our strategy is we've coined super urban. And so to define what that means, it means that we're developing mixed use developments in highly dense neighborhoods. And that's 300,000 people within a 5-kilometer radius. And So to have these super urban projects comes with a lot of challenges. You're going to have neighbors. You might have tieback agreements that you're going to need. You've got waterproofing challenges because you're having to build underground to fit the parking, et cetera, et cetera. And then you take performers being very challenged right now. We've got increasing construction costs. There's a lot of uncertainty on future market rates. So we're having to get very creative with our performer. So digitizing all of our cost control can really help us understand what we've done historically and be able to leverage that information quite quickly, and then be able to move that forward for the next 1 to 3 years projects.
Absolutely. I think that last piece that you touched on there, Sarah, is really critical for companies to prevent profit fade and be able to have insight into how those actuals are impacting future estimates. Steve mentioned at the beginning of this session that technology was a must for 2021, but so is changing the culture and accountability around cost. So Wes, I'm curious to hear your thoughts here. In order for companies to shift away from manual cost practices that have worked, that we trust, how does the culture also need to change internally?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, when you think of cost management, technology, and alignment of your organization and the culture of your organization all really go hand in hand. You can have the best electronic invoice technology that's out there, but if you don't have a good process, an accountability method for who owns that, and a good team and a good company culture, it's not going to matter. Your company is still not going to be good at managing costs. So you have to change the way that your organization approaches cost management, not just from the technology side, not just from the process side, but who owns it. You know, the old way of doing things, really of just having your project teams, your project managers, your APMs live within only their project. This is all I'm concerned with. I don't see anybody else costs. I'm just going to worry about my own and hope that everything else in the organization goes well. That just doesn't breed an entrepreneurial spirit, which is what we really want among our departments, our department leaders, and all of our team. You want everybody to take ownership. And so when it comes to cost management, accountability equals ownership. And so you want everybody to have a piece of that. And so when you only care about your projects and your tasks, then you miss the big picture. Now, on the flip side of that, if you want everybody to take ownership of the organization as a whole when it comes to cost, then you've got to be able to give them data that allows them to do that. You have to have transparency. The technology and the processes that are out there now that can help effectively manage cost in a digital world, they allow you to do that. They allow you to have real-time data and things. And so you can't ask your people to take ownership of cost management across the organization if you don't give them the information to help them do that. And so changing the culture and giving that entrepreneurial spirit where folks feel like I can own cost. I feel comfortable enough to go and ask questions on projects that are not my own because everybody can see everything. That only is going to make your organization more successful at managing costs, because everybody then starts to see how does it affect the bottom line and how does it affect my own pocketbook. And so you have to have a good culture when it comes to managing those costs before the technology can really help everyone. You have to sell them on the why. And so it's so important. And culture has been something I think that's become a more of a conversation piece, the culture of your company. And so when it comes to cost management, you got to have a strong culture.
I like how you started that, Wes, that technology, people, and culture go hand in hand. And I think now that we've led with this technology conversation, you're saying that people and culture almost sit first below that, and you have to nail that in order to build with the technology investment. Let's talk about a little what comes after that then with the process. So Morgan, when we talked earlier about digitizing cost management practices, you kept coming back to this specific phrase, and it was real-time insights. Would you mind speaking a bit more about this and how these insights have become an invaluable asset for Ryan's operations?
Yeah, so at Ryan, we are providing digestible dashboards that quickly communicate areas of concern related to cost management that incorporates both accounting and Procore data. So these dashboards take existing information, financial, safety, quality, and we serve it up to our teammates who are now more informed and can make proactive decisions together as a team. And so previously at Ryan, our superintendents and project managers, for example, wouldn't share financial information together, just like they wouldn't share schedule information together. It felt like there was one owner and one leader of each one of those documents. And over the course of time, we've been able to show them how leveraging this information together as a team will provide a better outcome moving forward. And so through these dashboards, we've given them the platform that first just provides transparency, and then second allows for that discussion so that they can move forward in a collaborative way together.
Without those types of shared insights, Morgan, the million-dollar question of knowing where you're making or losing money at any given moment becomes nearly impossible, right? Without a lot of time and looking through a lot of different data sets that are probably in different places. Sarah, I'm curious, how have you seen this challenge at First Capital evolve from something that was very manual to something that's more digital, and how has that improved your confidence in answering that question?
When I first started with First Capital, everything was being managed by Excel spreadsheets. And so the project managers would have to sit down with the development accountants, get the job cost reports, compare line by line. And it was a difficult conversation every month trying to understand where the costs were at, both on a construction level, but then as a total project level as well. And on complex construction management projects, that got it even harder to deal with. You fast forward 5 years and we've rolled out Procore. It's now embedded in everything that my team do. We've created our own handbook, so how Procore is used for us. And now I sit down with my 3 regional directors every month. We go through every project and they can tell me right down to the dollar exactly where we are and where we're sitting on the construction budget and the overall performer, which I think is very powerful to truly know where you are in your cost control. But I want to echo Wes's earlier point too, that yes, technology and definitely Procore has helped us enormously get that far. But you've got to get the right culture there. So you've got to have the right people who want to embrace that technology. They want to embrace the fact that they're in charge of their costs, and then they can make it a part of their everyday job.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with Sarah more. It's been a very similar story here at Green Mechanical. You know, thinking back to 4 years ago, 5 years ago, before we started down this path of looking at better cost management, changing process, going digital when it comes to everything that has to do with cost. It's almost a long forgotten place. A lot of our practices were archaic. We were still printing off spreadsheets and manually filling in vendor names for purchase orders. And when it came to sitting down with the accounting team at the end of every month before preparing financial statements for ownership, the cost at completion, you had to make sure to print it off right there. So you had the latest and greatest and go through, mark it up. It was a very old, archaic system and a bad process, an inefficient process. It worked before, but with the speed and the pace of construction and everything that's changed, it just was not working. Our project managers used to have to print off those purchase orders, scan them in or fax them out, and you know, it just became a very laborious thing. And so now with Procore, you know, the integrations that are there, we would have never looked at Procore if it wasn't for the accounting integration, because those real-time insights that Sarah and Morgan are talking about, to be able to have the ability from a management level, an executive level, even your ownership level, to be able to go in at any moment and see exactly how much cost has gone out on a project And to be able to compare that to a budget snapshot 7 days ago, it allows you not only to really hone in on your cost, but it helps you make better business decisions. You're able to really kind of to catch trends that before you weren't able to. You know, I can see all my committed costs are showing up as true commitments, even though they haven't been invoiced against. And so Procore is allowing us to automatically go ahead and budget those in as you're going to spend that money. And it allows us to pivot into a pre-construction, into a sales role of being able to make better decisions. What jobs to go after, what are the pain points within our cost and our organization right now. And so being able to pull those off, our Monday morning meetings at Green, where we kick off the week, we pull them up instantly. We see every project's health at that moment. And the entire team, we talked about culture and accountability, the entire team, every department manager around that table and around that conference phone, they can see that. And it goes back to that ownership. We're seeing it every week together exactly where it is, and we're catching things that before we live 2 to 3 weeks behind. By the time we finally see it, the risk is already there and the damage is done. The real-time insight that Procore gives us and the integrations into our accounting system, we can stop the bleeding on problems much quicker.
What I'm hearing from all of you is that it's possible, right? You forget that before you didn't have access to these sorts of insights. You weren't able to make decisions proactively to mitigate risks that were coming down the line because you were operating weeks behind the job. So it's possible if you get the technology, culture, and process piece right. But I want to talk about something that maybe is a little bit harder to control. And I know it's all very top of mind for each of us right now. And leading up to this meeting today, we talked a lot about the rising costs of commodities and projects overall. But it's a big challenge right now for the industry. These are sort of unprecedented times in that way. Many of you never seen things like this before. And it's gonna take all of us to get things back on track. So well, this might be a harder conversation, but it's gonna create this transparency and openness. And since we have an owner, a GC, and a specialty here all together, I'm curious, how do we get there?
So in this year of COVID and commodities pricing unpredictability, we've been able to respond with data-driven analysis. We've removed the gut feeling and we have real data to base our decisions off of. And that has brought clarity to an unknown, unpredictable situation and allowed us to make smarter business decisions moving forward. So specifically, earlier this month with commodities, we pulled in all of our active projects and reviewed our uncommitted costs, which for us designates the amount that has not been bought out yet, which is our riskiest monetary amount. It means we have an owner contract, but we haven't subcontracted that work just yet. And so we were able then to identify with our national subcontractors and vendors that have our largest open amounts on all these projects as well, which is also a very risky situation to be in if we have one sub across the country managing a multitude of projects. So from here, our directors and our VPs prioritized those conversations with the project teams in a methodical and data-driven manner to better identify the true risk that we have. And we did all of this in 24 hours. We pulled it, we put it in a dashboard, we drove those decisions, and the very next day we had a meeting where we were able to take down from 600 projects and narrow that down to just a handful. And those handful of projects, they have risk, but now we have a concerted effort of managers and leaders who are there to support our teams and work with the owners or work with those teams on how best to mitigate that risk. And so without Procore and our financial integrations, this would not have happened in the time frame that it did. It would have taken days, weeks, who knows how long it would have taken, and there would have been a lot of uncertainty around the numbers. And then on top of all of that, we put this information into Power BI and made it available so that it could just be consumed by anyone at any time if they needed to. So that's how we've been able to manage some of the uncertainty. And it's really just trying to identify the risk and then put a team in place that can best mitigate that risk. But without knowing the risk that you have, it's really difficult to know where to prioritize your time.
You said, Katie, this is top of mind for all of us, and it is my inbox as well as I'm sure most of the people on this call. Every day is a pricing alert, whether it be from a vendor, manufacturer, subcontractor, all across the board. I mean, COVID, obviously, outside of the financial world, has caused lots of pain and heartache and ruin. But as far as commodities and the inability to get material quickly, also along with just being able to arrive on an estimated price of what's it going to be tomorrow, it's just been impossible. I've never seen anything like it. I came through estimating before I moved into this side of the business, and I've never ever seen unpredictability of pricing as it stands right now. And everybody in the industry is talking about it. And it affects us every single day. And so we thought here about what's the answer? What do we do in the meantime before these prices plateau? There's really four approaches. Do you go in and try to estimate your projects on a basis of what's that price going to be in 30 days? And you can't do that because, number one, you're probably not going to get any projects that way because the fear is there. So if you go number two, it's to just eat whatever that cost increase is on your commodities. And so that's a very fine line between those. The third is to just pass those on to the customer as they come in, and we know that that's a very contentious conversation and doesn't always end up well. The fourth, which I think is the best, is everybody knows this is happening. Everybody knows it's a problem. It has to be a collaborative effort between every sub, every vendor, general contractor, owner, across the board, of knowing going into a project at this point, hey, there's a lot of price unpredictability. How can we be transparent with one another and combine that with some value engineering of, if we want to keep that material or that piece of equipment on this project, maybe there's a way we can do it that will save the money that now we're having to put into actually getting that piece of equipment or that material. And so from the bottom up and the top down, we've all, at this point, I think, we have to be transparent and say, hey, they're coming, the cost increases are coming, but on the back end, hopefully when things plateau and come back down, then we share that same transparency and we can go in the other direction. But it's a real hard question to answer right now on what's the best solution, because everybody truthfully is scrambling right now. And so it's going to have to be a collaborative effort.
Yeah, and building on what Wes said about price volatility, recently we closed some tenders on rebar, and they were valid for 24 hours, which just blew me away. And so how do you price that? And to Wes's point about being collaborative, which I agree with, but then how does the owner really price that, because the owner's paying for it? And so estimating can be an art form at the best of times, and then at the current with the current market, how do I put something in front of my executive board and say, this is the price that I think we can do this for and deliver for? And so it comes back for me to building good, solid relationships. If you want that collaborative approach, build the relationships with your contractors, build it with the trades, and then you can spend some time having an open discussion. And maybe between the four options that Wes just gave, you can all agree on a number that works for everybody, so that we're not screwing the trade out of trying to eat all of this cost, but at the same time you're not leaving the risk wide open to the owner of just flowing through all of those costs. So getting those good solid relationships, I think, is absolutely key to making some of this work. It's got to be collaborative more than ever, rather than falling back to the old ways of being very litigious and contractual relationships, which is just painful for everybody, and really only the lawyers win.
I think everyone listening is going to agree with you all. I've heard many times that those new pricing emails are coming in daily for folks, and the changes and the warranty on some of those prices are getting shorter and shorter. Rebar, Sarah, like you said, for a day is astonishing. But I think to the point that you all made, it's all kind of coming back to relationships, which we talked about quite a bit, that's truly the core of construction and everything that we do. And this leads me to my last question for you all. Steve said at the beginning, cost management is everyone's job. Whether you're an executive, an accountant, or a project manager, everyone has some ownership here. Have you all seen this mentality take shape at your companies? And if you have any parting words, like why would you say it's an important stance for your peers listening to take on this mentality going into this next year and beyond?
So we at Ryan have made cost management a partnership between PMs, superintendents, accountants, and developers. It's no longer just the project manager's responsibility at month end, and we've really tried to eliminate the finger pointing that would happen between all of these groups. When GCs begin to slip, or the schedule extends, or buyout looks differently than what our estimated values are. And so in order to do that, we have all internal teammates have visibility to the financials on day one. They're signing off that this is the cost and the schedule that we're agreeing to, and then they continue to communicate that throughout the duration of the project in a variety of different checkpoints. But it's all about visibility, which is something that we were not very good at sharing internally, and then working together as an internal team so that we stand behind what our end goals are.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That the finger pointing, right? I've been on both sides. I've been in estimating and I've been in project management. And whenever something goes right, it's always project management. Like, we did it. When it goes wrong, it must have been estimating's fault. And so before, it took a lot of calories to figure out who was telling the truth. Now, pretty quickly. And so not only does it allow that to happen, but yes, everyone takes ownership. It has to be that way. Here at Green, our field incentive program, we've even extended that all the way down to apprentices and journeymen and mechanics. Is what do you control directly? You control labor hour productivity and material waste. And so we're going to let you see the budget for the entire job. That's just not a world we lived in before, where the lowest person on the totem pole on the project can see every budgeted hour, every material dollar, because we're transparent with that. It lets them take ownership, and we share that savings if they can beat that with them. And so if nobody owns it, then nobody owns it, right? The whole organization is going to bear the consequences when there's little accountability and little ownership. And so here at Green, just changing that culture of we're all in this together. It's a team effort, and it affects everyone. So having real-time insights, being able to show that data quickly to everyone, it gives everyone the chance to be an owner, to go, I see something I can affect with my behavior or an idea, and I feel confident that I have the ability and the authority as a team member at this company to do that. And so it is 100% true. You have to have ownership.
Yeah, I agree with that. At First Capital, each employee has accountabilities, and their performance is metric to go against those accountabilities. And we've really put a big emphasis in the last few years about sharing those accountabilities with other departments so that you don't end up with that internal conflict occurring. So for my team in construction, we have a heavily weighted metric on coming in on budget. So the team member who creates the budget is the one who's delivering the project too. So they own it throughout, and it flows all the way down to the admin, and it flows all the way up to me, and then up to the COO to make sure that things are being delivered on budget. And then how it affects other teams is also put into that. So that's one way that we try to do that. I also review the procurement route, which is the best option for each project. Do we do stipulated price? Do we do construction management? We want to make sure that each project's risk sharing profile is set up correctly so that you've got project success, again, on all levels of the supply chain.
Great. Well, Unfortunately, that about wraps up our time together. So I want to thank you, Morgan, Wes, and Sarah, for such a thoughtful and engaging discussion today. And thank you, everyone, for coming to this session. Advancing cost management won't happen overnight, but these 5 things, investing in technology for cost management, creating company-wide alignment around who owns and how costs are managed, prioritizing that collaborative culture that's based on accountability, driving consistent processes with visibility and transparency, which might feel very new and different for things we've been used to over the years. And then lastly, leveraging real-time insights to inform better decision-making. Each are a great place that we can start investing in today to take control of costs. Next up, Chris Langiza, Procore's VP of Global Partnerships and Alliances, and David Luker, Director of Risk Consulting at RSM, will have a discussion on how to reduce risk through technology by integrating your construction management platform and your ERP solution. Thank you.